Ready to get started. Amy has our PowerPoint up and getting it ready to go. My name is Amber Deleger, and I am going to be starting us off today, but we also have Amy Vickers and Astrid Leiden here for help today. If you're having any kind of technical problems, make sure you go to your control panel and you can chat with Astrid, specifically any of those questions that you come up with during the webinar. We're going to do just a little bit of housekeeping to start out with. If you want to take a look at your control panel, you do have a few options there. Just so you know, we have muted everybody today, so you don't have to worry about having your microphone ready to go, and we won't be using any of the video tools, so you just need to be able to hear us today. But we will be interacting using some polls and some tests and then a hand-raising tool. The other thing we're going to be focusing on today is the materials link inside your control panel. So later on during the webinar, you will be asked to find some materials there. If you have questions that come up while we're doing the webinar, we might not be able to answer those during the webinar today, but if you put your questions in a chat box to everybody, we'll make sure we try to get to those on the Minnesota Literacy Council's Moodle site that we have set up to do more conversation later on this webinar. So if you have any questions, you can always feel free to email us directly, but the Moodle site is going to be the best place to reach us. I want to just remind you if you have a friend nearby, that this webinar will be great to be able to do with a friend. And if you have your calculator, now is a great time to get that ready, because we'll be using that in about 15 minutes. Let's look at who registered for this webinar. It's kind of exciting. If you look at this, we have some people from all over the state. It's great to see that we have great representation from not just in this metro area, but from all over. We're glad to see you here. This is a great way to get some great information, and it doesn't matter where you're at, so this is exciting. So we have some objectives today. Our big things we want to make sure that you're getting out of this presentation with us is we want to introduce you to the E-Quip Math Professional Development Series and get some practice with this GoToTraining webinar tool. We're going to also discuss 4 new tools available that is going to be different with our computer-based environment for the 2014 GED test. So we're going to spend some time looking at computer-based testing, how to use a personal whiteboard, the new formula sheet, and also spend quite a bit of time with the TI-30XS multi-view calculator.
Okay, thanks Amber. This is Amy. Thank you also everyone for taking the time today to attend episode 1 and to become more informed about the 2014 GED test. So like Amber said, we have a lot to cover today, so I will be brief with this, but I just want to give a quick introduction to GoToTraining. GoToTraining is the webinar tool that was purchased by Minnesota ABE so that all supplemental service providers would have one webinar tool to use, and that all Minnesota ABE practitioners could become familiar with using that tool. One purpose of having this tool is to reach to all the corners of Minnesota. So if you have colleagues who have not yet attended a GoToTraining webinar, please encourage them to attend one of the orientation webinars. And they can register for those orientation webinars at the Minnesota Literacy Council website. Okay, so now what is the E-Quip Math PD series? This is a series of webinars and then corresponding pre- and post activities to help equip teachers to prepare learners for the new GED math test. This series was developed in response to needs from the field. So, for example, feedback from the Summer Institute Math pre-conference session was that Minnesota ABE teachers needed more professional development around the higher level math content on the 2014 GED test. Each episode includes professional development around content knowledge and teaching, and addresses particular assessment targets of the 2014 GED mathematical reasoning module. And then just one thing that I wanted to highlight about the E-Quip series is that preparation materials, follow-up resources, and also a week-long discussion board will wrap around each webinar, hopefully making them better fit the needs of individual teachers. So today you are participating in episode 1. 4 more episodes are scheduled, and you do not need to attend all of the episodes or see them in order. All episodes will be recorded for future viewing and archived along with their corresponding resources. The next episode, Connecting and Interpreting Graphs and Functions, is scheduled for November 8th. The registration link will be available within the next week or so, and you can register at either of those websites that you see there on your screen, 2014nmn.org or at atlasabe.org. So now Amber is going to introduce the content of episode 1.
All right, so like I mentioned earlier, we're going to really focus today on how the computer-based testing might look for our students, how using the whiteboard is going to be different than using paper and pencil, the new formula sheets, so some formulas that were maybe taken off the formula sheet and the new ones that are added, and then we're going to spend some time learning some basic operations with the TI-30XS multi-view calculator, and we're going to try to make sure we get in a few of the practice problems from the item sampler so you can maybe see what these will look like when you're using this calculator. I hope that you've had some time to look at the preparation materials that we gave you when you registered. So that would be a good way to kind of make sure that you are ready to go with what we're going to be doing today. So looking at these 4 things, I'm going to put a poll on your screen, and I want you to let me know which of these changes do you feel like are going to be the most challenging adjustment maybe for you or for your students. So I'm going to put this poll on your screen right now, and you can go ahead and pick one of these 4 options. I'm going to give you about 5 more seconds to complete the poll. So let's look at these results. It looks like about half of the people attending the webinar today are more concerned about or think it'll be most challenging to utilize testing on a computer. It looks like most of us aren't too nervous or don't think it'll be too challenging to adjust to a dry erase board. But then the new formula sheet, it looks like the other thing. So number 1, the most challenging adjustment will be testing on the computer, and number 2, the new formula sheet. Luckily, we hopefully will be able to alleviate some of the feelings of nervousness about this as we go through the webinar more today. So now Amy is going to lead us through these changes, and she's going to start with the first change, paper-based to computer-based testing.
Okay, so the current GED test is paper-based for most of our learners, and the 2014 GED test is a computer-based test. Currently, the actual GED tests as well as the official practice tests are paper-based. Most test takers register with a paper form and receive paper printouts of their test scores. With the 2014 GED test, test takers will need to take computer-based tests at approved Pearson VUE test centers. Talk to your supervisor or look at the GED testing service website to find out about Pearson VUE testing centers in your area. GED Ready, the official practice test, will be delivered via computer. And additionally, registration and score reporting will be done via an online account that each test taker creates. So to find more details about any of this information, visit the GED Testing Service website. And you can see the link there on your screen. So let's take another quick poll. I'm just interested, I'm wondering how many of you have already visited the GED Testing Service website this year? Just take a minute and take a second and answer that question. Let's see. Looks good. Couple more people. So have you visited the GED Testing Service website this year? All right, let's see. I'll go ahead and close that. Most of you have voted. And so here are the results. It looks like 80% of you have already visited the GED Testing Service website this year. And so that's great, and I just really want to point you there. It's a very rich website, and they have a great FAQ page. So really, you can find more than enough information about changes to the GED test if you go there, and I really recommend that as a resource. Okay, so now in order to learn more about the digital literacy skills that test takers will need for the new test, I'm going to actually ask you to play a short video on your own screen. So before you start the video, please listen to the full instructions. So if you look in the materials section on your control panel, you'll see a video that's called Atlas E-Quip GED 2014 Computer Skills Video. So that's the video that I'll ask you to play. And I'd like for you to please raise your hand when you have finished watching the video, so that way we can know when people are finished. And then upon completion of the video, if you still have a minute or so left, consider or discuss the question, how can we incorporate these skills into our instruction? And then also, if the video does not play, it'll just be about 3 minutes. So just use the next 3 minutes to reflect on the changes that we have already discussed. And like I said before, this video, along with everything else, will be available for viewing after the webinar. Okay, so now please give this a try. So find that link, the link to the computer skills video in your materials section of your control panel, and I'm just going to be quiet for about 4 minutes so you can try this out. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and get started again. It looks like a lot of people have, I see that you're raising your hands that you finished, and it's been about 5 minutes. So let's go ahead and continue. For those of you that were, again, for those of you who are not able to see the video, it's very available. It's already posted on several of our Minnesota ABE websites, and it will also be incorporated with the all of the resources from this webinar. So you'll be able to see it anytime. So I just want to say thank you, St. Paul, for making this video. I think it's a very good overview of the digital literacy skills that test takers will need for the 2014 GED test, and it's presented in a very clear way. According to the registration information that all of you submitted when registering for this webinar, about half of your students have tried solving math problems on the computer. So it looks like you're already starting to incorporate these digital literacy skills into your math instruction. Some of the questions that you submitted upon your registration asked how students could practice the specific computer skills needed for the 2014 GED test. GED Testing Service has put out some tutorials. So these tutorials, they're called the 2014 Computer-Based Test Tutorials for each subject area, are available at the GED Testing Service website. So put that word, the tutorial, in your mind for practicing the digital literacy skills. And you can find a link to those tutorials at the Minnesota ABE 2014 GED Test Professional Development website, which is 2014inmn.org. And then students can use these tutorials to practice the digital literacy skills needed for the computer-based test. Okay, so now let's move on to change number 2. So the current GED test allows the use of scratch paper, and the 2014 GED test will not allow scratch paper, but instead will provide test takers with personal dry erase boards. The dry erase boards will be the size of legal paper, 8.5 by 14 inches. Boards will be given to test takers one at a time, and replacements can be given if needed. So given this change, it will be very helpful to work with your students to develop strategies for the best use of the dry erase board space. So just make sure that your learners are getting practice with these dry erase boards. Just like any test-taking tool, the first time they have experience with it should not be when they take the actual GED test. According to your registration information, about half of you have already used dry erase boards in your classroom. I have discussed the computer-based format and the dry erase boards, and so now Amber will talk about the third change.
So change number 3 is one that when we took our first poll today, we identified as something we think is going to be one of the most challenging parts of the new 2014 GED test. That would be the formula sheet. So previously we had a formula sheet right in our test booklet, so it was paper. The student could flip back to it and see it. But for the new test, they're going to have a shorter and different formula sheet on the screen that they're going to have to navigate to and be able to scroll within that sheet. So they won't have all of the formulas that they're looking for right away. They're going to have to navigate to it. So I want to take a few minutes to look at the formula sheet. So the new formula sheet has some things that they're alike and they're different. So right now we are going to do a little bit crazy stuff here. I'm going to take over the presentation for just a minute and we're going to go through a Prezi that will enable us to see what some of those changes are. And so hopefully we'll be able to get this going. Excellent. Are we good to go? Can we all see me? It looks like it. Excellent. So we're just going to do just a little bit of looking, and if you're interested, we can make sure that this Prezi is available for you to look at later as well. So we're just going to take a look at the things that are going to be the same and then the things that are going to be different. So just so that you know that it's not completely different, there are going to be some things that you've had experience with before. So let's look at first the current formula page. And this, I know it's a little jumpy, but hopefully you'll be able to see it once it gets where it needs to be. So this is the current formula page you're used to seeing. It has areas blocked off nice and neat. There's headings, there's titles, and this is the one that you should be used to working with and seeing with your students. And this is going to be a copy of what your students will see on the screen when they're taking the new test. So let's get a little closer look at that. So it's broken up into different sections, so it's not as delineated as the last one, but we still see that there's quite a few formulas there. And we're going to get into a little bit more on how they are alike or different. So it does say at the top of the screen that they are hoping that formulas are provided so that test takers can focus on the application of these skills rather than just the memorization of these formulas. But there will be some formulas that they have to memorize. So let's first talk about some things that are going to stay the same. So they will get some formulas. So students will have some formulas available, hopefully to lessen some of that anxiety that they're going to see. We're still going to see the area of a parallelogram and area of a trapezoid formulas. There's going to be formulas about the slope of a line. The Pythagorean relationship will still be on there, but they're going to not call it the Pythagorean relationship. They're going to refer to it as the Pythagorean theorem on the new page. And there will be still the simple interest formula. So there are still some things that we've already been doing that you're going to be seeing, but there's going to be some things that are going to change. So the first thing we're going to look at here is some formulas they've taken off. So your students will not have a ready reference for formulas concerning perimeter, circumference, basic area formulas, measures of central tendencies. That would be things like mean, median, mode, distance, and total cost. So we're not saying that those things won't be on the test, but the GED is now assuming that they have these skills and that they'll be able to apply these skills in more complex problems. So these are ones that you're going to want to make sure you're spending time with your students so that they know these without having a reference. They've also added some formulas to the new sheet. So surface area is one of the bigger things that we've noticed that teachers feel that's going to be a challenge. So there's going to be surface area. This includes spheres, different equations of a line, quadratic equations, and the quadratic formula. So these are going to be things that we haven't necessarily been teaching as much with the GED that we are going to have to make sure that we are including as we go forward. So let's just look a little bit at the major shifts. So as I've said, there are going to be fewer formulas given, which means that there's going to be more assumed baseline knowledge for students going into the test. We want to make sure that, just like Amy said earlier about the whiteboards, we don't want the first time they're seeing some of these formulas to be when they're taking the test. So we want to have them be able to see these and work with these ahead of time. The information on the new formula page is presented differently. So we want to make sure that students know that there are going to be letters that they aren't going to necessarily have a key for. So some of the big ones that we've seen is that they use letters like B, and that stands for base. It doesn't tell our students that on the actual page itself, so that's something we will need to teach them ahead of time. H stands for height. S, which is something that is definitely new, will be slant height. And M stands for slope. So those are ones that we're going to want to make sure that we explain to our students so that when they get there, they know what to do and what to substitute into their formulas. And there's going to be fewer categories of formulas. So rather than breaking each section down, the students will have to know that there's only going to be three main areas: area, surface area, and algebra, in which they can find their formulas that they're looking for. So we're just looking at there's things changing, but luckily there are things that are staying the same, and some of these formulas we are going to be able to look at and compare them to things that they already know, so that hopefully not all of this will be brand new. So if you believe it or not, we're already halfway through today's webinar. It's going quickly. What we want to do today is we want to do a little test. So we want to see how much you have learned so far. And so what we're going to do is I'm going to start a test here. So with this test, there's going to be a few questions for you to answer. And then when we're done, we'll just check in and see how we're doing. So I'm going to launch this test here for us right now. And I want you to take a few minutes to answer these questions. All right, we're going to close it in about 10 seconds, so if you can finish up what you're working on, please. All right, so we are going to review these results. And I'm going to share these so we can see as a group here. So we're just reviewing, so these four major things we've talked about. Which of the following formulas is not available on the 2014 formula sheet? Circumference of a circle. So no longer are they giving us those basic circle formulas. We're going to have to know those. But luckily, slope of a line, Pythagorean theorem, surface area of a cylinder, and quadratic formula will all be available for our students. Number 2 says, will scratch paper be allowed? 100% of you answered correctly, so excellent job on that one. And let's look at number 3. Practice tests will be available on the computer just like the 2014 GED test. So there will be practice tests available, and hopefully in a few weeks we'll be learning about the ability to take a free practice test so we can the full-length practice test on the computer so we can see what our students will be looking at. And how many more E-Quip series episodes are scheduled? 4. So after this episode, if you've enjoyed what you've done and you have some more math skills you're hoping to brush up on, there'll be 4 more opportunities this year to do episodes to get yourself more prepared and maybe feel a little bit more comfortable with what we're doing with this new GED test. So I'm going to close these results up right now, and Amy's going to take back over the screen so we can get ready to talk about our next skill. So for this next part, I need all of you that have it available to you to get the calculator ready to go. So I'm going to put a little poll up here to give you just a second. Do you have the calculator? Yes or no? Just answer this so that I know how many people have this in front of them. We just have a few more people we're waiting on. And it's okay if you're sharing the calculator with a friend that you're doing the webinar with. Excellent. Let's see. So it looks like about 64% of you have a calculator in front of you. If you don't have a calculator, don't fret, it's okay. We're going to be using an on-screen emulator to show you what we're doing, but it is great to practice. If you haven't looked at the TI-30XS Multi-View, they do have them available to purchase at places like Target and Walmart, and they're relatively inexpensive if you want to grab one to play with while you're learning. So I'm going to take away this poll here, and we're going to let Amy's presentation come back up. Excellent. So one of our next major changes we're going to talk about is this calculator. So they were using the handheld Casio FX260 before. You see that beautiful picture there. And we're going to be switching to an on-screen model. So we've had some questions, and it's definitely going to come down to personal preference if you think it's more helpful to have students practice with the calculator or just looking at it on the screen. So it's going to come down to personal preference. So let's look at this multi-view calculator. So there's some big changes here. So multi-view, what does that mean? Well, what that means is that they will be able to see multiple lines of text on their calculator screen. We're going to show you that in just a minute. This calculator understands the order of operations, so you can enter in equations as you see them, and the calculator will be able to solve them with the order of operations in mind. We're going to enter numerators and denominators much differently than we did before. So when we're working with fractions, we have a lot more options available to us. And there's this really cool option we're going to be showing you to convert among equivalent values. We're going to talk a lot about toggling in just a minute. So let's go to the next slide. I want to be able to practice some of these things with you. And to do that, we're going to be using an on-screen emulator. So to be able to find this emulator, we just did a Google search. They cost about $76-ish to get a single license. There are site licenses available. And this is great. Amy has it up on her screen right now, as you can tell. We are switching, there we go. We are switching to this on-screen model, so the thing your students are going to be seeing is going to look very similar to this. So hopefully your calculator in front of you looks like the calculator that you see on the screen. So Amy, I do, excellent. So I want to point out some things for us today. Some major things. We still have our basic number buttons, so we have our traditional keys here like you've been used to seeing before. We have a new tool over here. We have the directional buttons. So this helps us navigate the multi-view screen. We're going to have operation buttons. So this button right here is going to enable us to do positive and negative numbers. We're going to be doing, let's see, we have parentheses. That's something that we had before, but we might not have used as well as we can with this new calculator. We have our pi button. We have this caret arrow key. That is what we're going to be using for exponents. And then we still have our second key here to get into these green operations that we're going to go over. So that's just a really quick little tour. We're going to go over some of these a lot more specifically. So let's practice negative numbers. So before, when we entered negative numbers, we had to enter the number first. Well, we don't do that on this calculator. To be able to enter negative numbers, we're going to start with the negative sign. So I'm going to click this negative sign here first to enter -7. So when I click, excellent. So when I click, the negative sign comes up, and then I can go ahead and click 7, and I can now enter it just the way I see it. If I try to enter it the other way, if I try to enter it with the negative sign last, it uses that negative, it thinks you're going to be entering another number. So we want to make sure we're not doing that. Now, as you can see, we're kind of showing this multi-view screen right now. We have our first line of information. That's already up there, but we're entering more information, and we can see what our answer was before. So that gets to be helpful when we have multiple step word problems. We still have clear, so I'm going to get rid of some of that right now. Let's enter one more negative number. So I want to enter the number negative 1.2. So to enter that, I'm going to click the negative sign first, then my 1, my decimal point, and 2. So entering negative numbers is pretty easy, nothing too crazy, and I can work with it. So that's what a negative number looks like, nothing too crazy. Now if I want to do an exponent, like I said before, we're going to be doing it in a couple different ways. So I can use my square button just like I used the last one. So if I'm going to do the number 3 squared, I'm going to push the button 3 and then my square key. So what's nice about this is that it makes sure that we can see the squared nice and easy. It's pretty, it's easy to view. And when I hit enter, we don't really have equal, so we have to make sure that our students are comfortable with that. I don't really see an equal, I need to hit enter. So then our answer comes up right there. Now, it's nice if we're doing multiple step word problems to have all these lines of text available for our previous work, but sometimes it can get a little messy. So I can hit clear and it can take those away so that I have a fresh screen again. But what happens if I don't want to just square something? Sometimes we have to do other exponents as well. We can do something like 2 to the 9th. So if I'm doing that, I can press 2. My arrow key, this root key, this key right here, kind of reminds me of a caret. Now when I do that, you notice that now I have a flashing cursor in the exponent area. This is because we can do complex exponents. So we can actually put a problem in the exponent area. But for right now, I'm not going to do that. I just want to know 2 to the 9th power. So I'm going to enter my 9 there. And since I'm done, this is all the math I needed to do, I'm going to go ahead and click enter here. So that gives me my answer. But like I said, we can do a complex exponent. So if I wanted to do the problem 2 to the 4th minus 2, I can enter it 2, and then we can get to my exponents. And then I can do math inside my exponent here. So 4 minus 2. So this is a definite change from our last one. And we can hit equal. So 4 minus 2 is 2, and 2 squared is 4. So we've got our negative numbers, we've got our exponents. Now we're going to be moving on to roots. Now, before we used to have to enter the number first and then enter the radical, but just like with our negative sign, we're going to do the radical first. I'm going to clear the screen just to make sure we have everything away that we don't need. So to do this, I need to hit second. And then if you look above the square root sign, we have or above the square sign rather, we have our square root. So I'm going to click second. And look, it tells me right up here in the corner that I'm in my second. And then just like with our exponents, we can put a more complicated formula in here or more complicated equation in here, but I'm just going to be doing something simple. Let's do the square root of 64. And then I hit enter, not equal, and it gives me my answer of 8. Now, one of the things that happens that it's going to be different is if we do a non-perfect square, because when we don't always have perfect squares. So we're going to do the square root of 50. So if you're following along, we're going to do second square root 50, and I'm going to hit enter. Wow, that's going to really throw off some of our students who aren't used to seeing an answer with a radical in it. But I want to let you know, not to stress out. If we want just approximation of this, we can use this key right here where it looks like 2 arrows going back and forth. That's the toggle key. So I can click the toggle button and it will put an approximation for us. So we know that the square root of 50 is 7.07 if we're going to just approximate that answer. So toggle is a really great way to get us back and forth through some things that if we just want approximations. We're going to see this again when we get to pi. So one more example of this would be if we were going to do the square root of 8. We would do square root 8. And we would hit enter for equals. And then to be able to get an answer that our students might be able to use a little bit easier, we can hit toggle. And we get our approximated answer. So that's a really nice thing that can come up. We are going to be using toggle quite a bit. This gives us an approximation of other things we're working on. I'm going to clear the screen here just a second. Fractions, we can do fractions as well. So when you're doing fractions, you have a couple different options. You can enter your numerator first and then enter the fraction key. So we're going to try that to enter the number 9/10. So our fraction key is here. Do we notice it no longer says A, B, C? It uses N over D, so numerator over denominator. So that's really nice. So to be able to do that, we can push our numerator first, our fraction button, and then it pops it right into our fraction form. Then we can enter our denominator, and we can hit enter. So what's nice about this is we can, if you just have a single fraction that you're working with, we can do it that way. You can also enter a fraction. Maybe you have a more complicated fraction you're working with. We can push the fraction button, and now it tells me, what do you want as your numerator? So in here I can put in, let's try 9 as our numerator. And for our denominator, I need to tell it I want to go down to my denominator. So I'm going to use our arrow button here that will get us down into our denominator. I'm going to enter 78. So now I have 9/78 as my fraction. And what it does is when I hit enter, it automatically reduces that. So just to let you know that just like on our previous calculator, it will automatically reduce it. If you have a mixed number you're trying to put in, above that fraction key, we have the ability then to go into a mixed fractions, or mixed number rather. So if we do that, we can hit second. And now if you look at that, I have a space for my whole number and my fraction. So I can do 9, there we go, and 9. Oops, I don't want 9. Oh, let me go back up. There we go. Let's do 8/9. So it's nice to be able to use this to make some corrections if we need to. And now I can push over, and now I can enter more information. Or if I'm done, I can hit enter, and it will turn it into an improper fraction for me. So I have that ready to go. I can also hit toggle here, and it will take it from a fraction form to a decimal form. Percent, we're just going to do just like we've done before. So instead of, we can actually use the percentage key. So if we do percentage button, I totally just lost you. It's above our parenthesis right here. So if I enter 89%, I can use that inside a problem. But what's really nice is if we can use it, our toggle button, to get it into a fraction form. So if your students are having some trouble with those, that tool is available. We also have pi. Notice that pi is a button all hanging out by itself. I can enter 9 pi. It shows up like pi on our screen. When I'm doing this, it gives me, it uses pi. If I just need an approximation, I can go ahead and use that toggle button again. So a lot of these things, if you have it in one form and you want it in a different form, you're going to be using that toggle. So just so we know, there are only about 5 questions that are going to not be able to have the calculator be used. If you're having an on-screen, if you're using the on-screen version, some keys on your keyboard will work, but some will not. If you want to check out the emulator, go ahead and do a Google search. It's super easy, and what's nice is that there are lots of tools available to be able to do screenshots with these as well. And just remember, it does not automatically approximate your answer, so you will need to use toggle to do that. So that was really quick and a whole lot of information, but now Amy's going to lead us through some practice problems that will enable us to practice some of these tools.
Okay, thank you, Amber. So we have a couple minutes here where we can go through some sample questions. I just want to add about the emulator that it is possible to buy individual on-screen calculators, but you can also buy them as like a site license, and I haven't looked into it that much, but I have seen a few examples of that, just so you know. So if you're, I know some programs are considering maybe they would buy the on-screen versions rather than the handheld versions for their classes. Okay, so when I looked at your registrations, I saw that most people registered for the webinar today have not yet tried the calculator. So I'm glad to see that most of you are able to work with one today. And so let's give this a try right now. We'll try to answer this question from the item sampler. So let me clear this. Okay, so the question says, what is the value of 36x minus 8y squared when x equals 3 and y equals -6? So let's try to apply some of the ideas that Amber just showed us. I think this example illustrates how well the calculator works with order of operations. So to solve this, you can just substitute the given values and then type the entire expression into the calculator. So I'm looking at 36, so I'll type in 36. And now for x, I will substitute the number 3. So I'm just going to put this 3 in parentheses. And then minus, and then press the 8 key. And now y is squared, so that -6 is squared. So I'm going to make some parentheses and type the negative and then the 6, close those parentheses, and now I need to square that. So I will press the x squared button. So before I hit enter, just take a minute and you can see that it just matches the expression exactly as it is written on the sample question, just except that we've substituted in the values for x and y. So then if you hit enter, you can see the answer is -180. So I would choose B. And let me retrieve the calculator. Okay, so let's see, excuse me for a moment. I'm just trying to have all of these things open on my screen at once. There we go. Okay, so the second sample question that I would like to do, also from the item sampler, I think does a really good job of illustrating the calculator's strength in working with order of operations. And it also illustrates working with fractions and with pi. So let's take a look at this question. It says, an office uses paper drinking cups in the shape of a cone with dimensions as shown. Okay, so to the nearest tenth of a cubic inch, what is the volume of each drinking cup? All right, so this again is just a formula. I copied the formula there for you on the screen. Copied that from the formula sheet. So let me clear this. Now I just want to type, honestly I just have to say this. There could be other ways to solve this, maybe with estimating, and if some of you are thinking that, that's great. But I just really want to use this to show the kind of the how really powerful this calculator is. So so first I'll just begin by typing 1/3, and then I'll try to substitute as I go. So volume is 1/3. So there's my 1. I'm going to make it in a fraction and 1/3. Okay, and in order to get out of the denominator and go on to the next number that I want to enter, I need to press this button here to move us sideways. So now we have moved past 1/3, and now I can just type pi because that's next. And next is the r squared, so radius squared. So I'm seeing here in this question that they don't give the radius, but they do give the diameter. And because I have been paying attention in my GED math class, I know that actually the radius is half of the diameter. So I'm just going to try to enter it this way. I'm just going to enter the diameter and then divide that by 2. So I will enter 2 3/4. So let's do the second button and then the mixed number. So 2. Now I need to move into the next place. And now I'm in the numerator, so I'll type a 3. I need to move to the denominator, so I'll press this button. And now I have 2 3/4. But notice that the cursor is still in the denominator. So in order to move on to the next symbol that I want to key in, I need to press this button. So there's my 2 3/4. And now I need to divide that by 2 in order to give me the radius. So, okay, there's the radius. And now I need to square that, and I can do that with this button, the squared button. And then I'd like to multiply that by the height. So notice this too. I don't, in algebra, when things are right beside each other, that indicates a multiplication, and it's fine to just enter it like that, and then the multiplication is implied. So I'm just going to make sure that I have everything, 1/3 pi. And then here is the diameter divided by 2, which gives me the radius, and all of that is squared and times the height, which is 4. So it's all ready to go. So I will press enter, and I see that I have 121 pi over 48. Okay, so I'm looking at the choices, and I see that that is not a choice. So I wonder, it looks like I need to find an approximate answer, not that exact answer with pi. So like Amber told us, here's where we can use this toggle button. It can toggle to the approximated answer. So I see the answer is 7.92. If I round it and I look down here, and there it is, choice B, 7.9. So again, I just thought this was a very lovely illustration of really the power of this calculator. And it looks like, let's squeeze in one more sample problem here. Okay, this example, the third example, just does a really good job of illustrating the use of the percent key. With the current GED test, I would not use the percent key. I always would teach to convert things to decimals first. But with this one, I just want to show you what this could look like with this new calculator. So let me clear all of these things. Okay, get everything back now. And okay. Okay, so let's read this question. It says the probability of rain on each of the next 3 days is given in the table. Tuesday 30%, Wednesday 45%, and Thursday 50%. So based on this table, what is the percent probability that it will rain all 3 days? So I'm just going to do this very quickly, but I think the percent key is interesting, so I want to show it to you. So to me, this is a part of a part of a part, right? So we're going to be multiplying. So I'm just going to type in 30 and then use the second key to get the percent. And then I'll say times 45, use the second key to put the percent, and then times 50, and then use the second key to reach the percent. And I'm multiplying those percents together, and if you press enter, I see the answer is 0.0675. But it looks like it's asking me to type in a percent. It's asking me for a percent. So luckily on this calculator there is a button that says right here, it says convert this to a percent. So let's just do that. So I hit the convert to percent button and then I'll press enter, and then it automatically converts it to 6.75%, which I would then type in. So that was very quick, but I just wanted you to see an example of how those percent keys could work.
Excellent. Well, we are just about out of time, but I just want to tell you where we've been. So we have practiced looking at the computer-based testing environment, using personal whiteboards, looking at what the new formula sheet has to offer, and then playing a little bit with the TI-30XS multi-view calculator. So we've done a whole lot in this last hour. Before we leave, I want to just do a really quick little poll because I think it's great to see what we are most excited about. So just take a really quick second here and tell me which one of these changes are you excited about? We're just waiting for a few more people to answer. All right, let's take a look. Can we share? So it looks like 74% of you are excited about using the on-screen calculator, which I think is, or just using the calculator and the on-screen options that we have available, so I'm excited about that as well. We don't have anybody super excited about using a dry erase board, but maybe once you start practicing, you'll get more excited about that as well. And hopefully as you get some more exposure with the formula sheet, maybe we'll get excited about that too. Maybe after you've checked out some of these webinars, you'll have some more excitement building up here. So before we leave today, I am just going to let you know that for the next week, Amy and I are going to be available on a Moodle page, and all of those resources will be available on the Atlas website or on the 2014inmn.org website. So we will be there to answer any questions that you have about this webinar today or anything that's come up once you go and try to practice things. That'll be a great tool to review and connect with what we've learned today. We're going to post some questions in there like, how could a calculator this powerful change our instruction, and should it? And consider one thing that you learned during this episode and how will it look in your classroom. So this will be a great way to maybe connect with some of our colleagues as well. So just as a reminder, Amy and I will be available for 1 week to answer any of your questions online. Then those conversations and this webinar will be archived so you can view it later. I want to remind you that our next webinar will be on Friday, November 8th at 2 o'clock. That webinar is going to be about connecting and interpreting graphs and functions. I know I'll be there, so I hope to see many of you as well. And just as a reminder, if you are logging into the MLC course for the first time, you will need to create an account to be able to access that information. But it's super easy and won't take a lot of time for you to do. When you leave today, you're going to be given a post-webinar evaluation. If you don't have time to do it right now, it'll only take a few minutes, but if you're busy, you can. There'll be a link to it in the post-webinar email. That email might take up to 24 hours to get to you, but please make sure you go ahead and you fill in the evaluation on that so we can continue to make these opportunities helpful for you in all the ways that you need. Amy, anything else you'd like to follow up with?
No, that sounds good. I guess just one thing. I just really want to encourage everyone to bring your questions to the online discussion that we'll have. It will just be for 1 week, so it's not a big commitment, and we would really appreciate any ideas or thoughts. that you have about what you're learning about as we learn all of this together. So just please participate in that discussion if you can. And
And
thank you
thank you
for
so
being
much for
here.
joining us today. We've had a really good time, and we hope that you were able to learn something as well.
And just to let everybody
Good.
know that the link
Thank
to
you.
that follow-up discussion will be in the follow-up email that you receive.
All right. Well, that is